Good morning and welcome to the next installment of our Caregiver Skills Clinic series. This one is on the topic of using movement and motion for quality of life. We're very glad that you're with us here this morning. I am pleased to be co-presenting this program. First of all, I'm Amy. I'm the Director of Education with Alzheimer's San Diego, and I am co-presenting this program with Thomas Shaw, who you're going to get to hear more about later. But this is Thomas, and a real wealth of expertise on this topic. So happy to be co-presenting with you today. So here is our agenda for this program. We're going to talk about the key benefits of physical activity, both for people who are living with dementia and those who care for them. Our perspective here today is we're mostly addressing directly the family caregiver, the non-professional care partner caregiver who is supporting a person who's living with dementia. But please know, if you are living with dementia, if you are a professional who cares for people with dementia, much of this will be relevant to you as well. We're going to talk about some practical strategies for incorporating physical activity, movement, and motion into everyday life, and make sure, of course, that you know where to find more information, more resources, and more support. So I would like now to invite my co-presenter, Thomas Shaw, to introduce himself to you.
Thanks, Amy. And again, good morning, everybody. I am Thomas Shaw, as Amy said. Those bullets up there represent my life, and I'll talk a little bit about all of them. First, the retired Navy captain, 27 years in the Navy. Relevance to this discussion is it kind of framed my response to the next one as an Alzheimer's care partner when my wife Lynn was diagnosed with young onset dementia, early onset Alzheimer's in August of 2016. And then I think there's some good news, good parts and bad parts about looking at things from the Navy captain. I think it formed my response and looking for resources and getting help and trying to stay ahead of the problem. But at the same time, as a problem solver, I found myself in a problem I couldn't solve. I couldn't solve Lynn's Alzheimer's. And a little bit on her story, and I'll get to the rest of the bullets, but pretty typical for early onset, lots of things I couldn't explain, her spending money we didn't need to spend, forgetting things, forgetting my birthday, things like that, thinking she was just being a bad wife. But then she was really having a lot of trouble at work. Her boss called me in to discuss some things that were happening. So we got her a neuropsychological exam, and that was in August, and where she had significant cognitive impairment, and that just happened to be the same day I started my master's program in kinesiology. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend being a full-time graduate student and an Alzheimer's caregiver. That was a challenge. And then from there, she finally, through all the different tests that I'm sure you're probably familiar with, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving of 2016. So, and at that point, her neurologist said she was transitioning from early to mid stage. So that was a pretty big turnaround in a short period of time, to thinking she was just forgetful and being a bad wife to she's already well into the journey with Alzheimer's. An update on her about of September of last year. As of September of last year, she's in residential memory care. So it just got to the point where I couldn't care for her adequately at home. She was having hallucinations, paranoia, a whole bunch of different things. But good news is she's doing great where she is. And now that I'm able to visit her again, we've just been having some great visits. So, so far so good with that. And she's actually transitioning from mid to late stage now. So she transitioned through all that pretty quickly, but she's doing well. So again, the Master of Science Kinesiology, my focus was on wellness, and that's kind of turned into a couple different things I do at SDSU, but specifically now I'm researching caregiver wellness, and more specifically young onset dementia caregiver, because not that our problems are any harder than anybody else's, but it's a little bit different when you're in your mid to late 50s and you're visiting your wife in memory care. I mean, nobody else looks like her there. She's one of the youngest ones, and it's just a different problem set. So that hasn't had a lot of focus. So that's what I'm looking at now. And also just in general lifestyle as it relates to brain health. So that's my story. And Amy, I don't think I do have control of the slides. Okay, never mind. All right, so no surprise to anybody that caregiving is hard. And as you can see in this slide, where the percentage of people who experience things, I'm not going to read it to you. A couple that I think are interesting is the one on the breaks, especially as Lynn got farther into her dementia. I felt like I was captain of the ship again, where I was always on watch. Didn't matter, any time of day or night, I could get a call that something was going on. And that I felt that way with Lynn, because early on I could leave her alone at home for a little while and go out and exercise or do what I needed to do. And then once I didn't feel comfortable leaving her at home, I was fortunate that I could get caregivers or volunteers or an Alzheimer's companion through Alzheimer's San Diego, which was great for me to get a little bit of a break. And then as she got farther along, then I couldn't even feel like I could be outside the same room with her, and sleeping became a problem. She'd get up to go to the bathroom and not be able to find the way back to the bed or not be able to find the bathroom, and she was having hallucinations anyway. So just it was really, really hard on me and hard on her too. Just always being on edge. But you can see some other things, generally as caregivers, we don't necessarily eat well or as well as we should, and maybe we don't get enough exercise. Sleeping is problematic just from the being awake in the middle of the night, just to not having a good quality of sleep. And then sometimes it's hard to find support. So it's a theme I'll mention a few times, that caregiving is hard, and you all know that. But I think there are some things that can be done to make it less hard. It's never going to be easy, but it can be less hard. And I think there's an emotional and a physical toll that it takes on us, and you can't separate the two. They're really intertwined.
Sorry about that. I think we've got fighting mice here. So sorry about that. So we would love to hear from you briefly. Thank you so much, Thomas, for sharing a very condensed version of a long and complicated journey as a caregiver, and of course, as a researcher in caregiver wellness. Look forward to learning from you. We would love to hear from those of you who are with us here today. If you feel comfortable, in the chat box, send a message. And again, please send this to all panelists and attendees so that we can all see your comments, and tell us something about yourself, why you came today, if there's something about this topic that struck you, something you really need to learn, what challenges you are experiencing in terms of being physically active as a caregiver, or incorporating physical activity into your care of the person who's living with dementia. Or if you have ideas, what activities are working for you, something that you'd like to share with the rest of the group in terms of incorporating some physical movement. I'll give you a moment. Please go ahead and share that with us in the chat if you would. Don't be shy. We know you're here. We'd love to hear from you. It really helps us to know who's in the room, and what your interests are and what challenges you're facing. Hi, okay. Dina has got her mother, recently moved in after your father died 3 years ago, because maybe not recent. That's a big adjustment for everyone, for sure. Welcome. Anyone else want to share a little bit? Good morning. Mother is 81, had dementia for several years. visiting regularly, helping with laundry and washing her hair. Great. Laundry is actually a great source of physical activity and movement. If there's ways you can incorporate doing some of that together, great. Trying to keep mother with dementia active and engaged. Yes, great. Having 24-hour care, trying to find ways to engage with her, somebody who's no longer speaking. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Great, wonderful. Someone from the Southern Caregiver Resource Center is with us here today. We'll be talking about the importance of external support, a terrific nonprofit here in San Diego who provide a lot of support to family caregivers. Looking for more engagement. I'm seeing that theme here in the chat. Yeah. Okay, 91-year-old father, recent strokes, uses a chair or a wheelchair, lives in a boarding care. Terrific. Thank you for coming today. Okay. Guidance. Guidance in avoiding feelings of overwhelm. Yeah, that's an important one. Great. It's great to hear from all of you. We're seeing more and more responses coming in. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your challenges, staying active. Yes, this is a goal. The goal, of course, keeping your loved ones safe and happy, right? While staying engaged and physically active. Terrific. Okay, well, Thomas and I are gonna be reading all of these responses as we can, trying to incorporate your needs into our program. It's really wonderful to hear from all of you. Okay, looking for guidance. Yeah, how to motivate. Yeah, we will be talking about motivation and dealing with people who are expressing resistance at the idea of being physically active, an enormous barrier for sure. Okay. Oh goodness, somebody who just moved her 80-year-old mother here last weekend. Big adjustment for you. Yeah. Looking for guidance. Terrific. Okay. Great. Thank you all so much. Please feel free, if you haven't had a chance yet, to type in your answers and submit them. Feel free. We will keep reading them and incorporate as much of your feedback into the program here today as we can. And I will keep us moving on the agenda. Actually, Thomas is going to take the first segment of our program here today, talking about the key benefits of physical activity for people who are living with dementia and their care partners.
Okay, thanks, Amy. I want to talk a little bit about just some guidelines from the National Institute of Health. And it's not much, 150 minutes a week of moderate intensity, which means you can perform it while you are talking basically, or 75 minutes to 150 of vigorous, which is a little bit harder to maintain a conversation, or any combination of the two. Basically, if it's a vigorous activity, it counts 2 for 1. And the key is just to be moving throughout the day. I'm not sure, Amy, why our animation's not playing.
Yeah,
but,
I'm not sure either. Here we go.
There it goes. Okay, so, and it doesn't have to be all in one block, just as it's spread throughout the day. So it can be, as you can see on the animation, just things here or there. And it is, and it's actually okay to be a weekend warrior as long as you do something throughout the week. It wouldn't just necessarily go out if you sit around all week and then run 10 miles or something. Probably wouldn't recommend that. But if you get the majority of your 150 minutes in one day, that's not a problem either. But spread throughout the day, spread throughout the week is the way to go. And also muscle strengthening a couple times a week is good as well. And while these guidelines are the same for people without dementia or people with dementia and just about anybody with any sort of issue. So the guidelines really don't change. And it's just the same for everybody, whether you have dementia, whether you don't have it, whether you have diabetes, heart, anything. It's really the guidelines are the same. And the good news about all this is, done correctly, there's almost zero risk of physical activity as opposed to other forms of medications and things that may have some risk to them. Physical activity really doesn't, as long as it's done correctly. I'm having trouble with this. There we go. Slide is a little bit slow. So I want to make a point here that what we're really talking about is physical activity and not necessarily exercise. If you'll allow me to read a couple of definitions to you, I want to read, these are from the American College of Sports Medicine, that physical activity is defined as any bodily movement produced by skeletal muscles that results in energy expenditure. So that covers a lot. And you can see in that slide that does cover exercise. Exercise is a subset of physical activity, but that's planned, structured, and repetitive. But things you can do to keep moving. It could be walking, could be bicycling, could be gardening, could be cleaning the house, could be playing with your pets, playing with your kids, can be a lot of different things add up to physical activity. So really the point is to keep moving throughout the day, 22 minutes a day minimum, 150 minutes a week, and not necessarily exercise. I know the thought of exercise can somewhat be demotivating to people sometimes. So we're just talking about keeping moving. Okay. All right. So these are the benefits of physical activity for the person with dementia, and they're pretty good. I mean, I think one of the key is brain health. I mean, once a person has dementia, Alzheimer's, really, I mean, that's it. Physical activity is not a cure, but there's some research that suggests that it can help slow it down as far as brain health goes. But I think too, the symptom management, and really saw this with Lynn, and something I should have mentioned earlier, that physical activity was something it's been important to both of us. I was in a job that physical fitness was part of my job description, and I was given time during the workday to exercise. And it's something I did because I had to do it professionally, but I also enjoyed it personally. And it was a big part of Lynn's life as well. She was an aerobics instructor when there was aerobics. She was a dancer. And the things we tended to do together, and still to a much more limited extent now like to do together, involve physical activity. So it's been a big part of our lives. And I think that is showed with her in the symptom management, because she's still physically really strong, cognitively not so much, but physically really strong. But especially as I've noticed her progressing in the disease, even though she's only 64, she still, I mean, she has trouble walking. She does, and understanding the limits of where her body is. So I can, and seeing the other residents in her facility, I can just tell that even with that, the fact that she's in good physical condition, I think helps. And she does fall occasionally or bump into things, and I think being more physically fit helps her recover from that. But balance too. That's really that's a key thing that physical activity can help with. And I think too, it helped Lynn be less depressed when she was upset, or still now, and just getting up and walking or dancing, whatever it is that she can do. I think it just helps to redirect her and reduce her depressive symptoms. And sleeping on a regular schedule, still kind of a problem with her, and appetite. Those are hard, but I think for her anyway, and for everybody, from what the research shows, that physical activity helps with both of those, regulating appetite and sleeping. And there's a big social component to it too. The research shows that doing physical activity in a group has much more benefits, positive benefits, than doing it alone. So there is a social component to it as well. It's not surprising. And again, the physical activity doesn't just help with dementia. It's not focused on that. So if people have other conditions, the physical activity helps to control those as well. All right, so there's benefits for the care partner as well. So all those things that I mentioned are benefits for the person with dementia. They are also benefits for us as the care partners. Helps our sleep, helps with our appetite, helps with our depressive symptoms, does all of those things. And I think there's another part of it too, that there is an actual physical response to a reduction in stress. So that's also helpful, because I mentioned it before, and I'll mention it again, that caregiving is hard. So anything we can do to make it less hard, I think is helpful. So And physical activity certainly is one of those things that helps us or can help us as caregivers or care partners. So these are some issues that we all face. You know, and I'll give some examples for me. Patience, anger was a real problem for me. Not angry at Lynn, but angry at the situation. And then I became angry at myself for being angry all the time. And then, you know, that took a physical toll on me that people started seeing, that I just didn't even look the same. Through all of that, and it was tough. But I managed to maintain a physical activity and an exercise program through all of that. Like I mentioned, I would take advantage of Lynn had some friends who could take her out, or there were the Alz companions we got through Alzheimer San Diego, and then started paying caregivers to come stay with Lynn so I could go exercise. So, and I'm fortunate that I could do that. And I really feel for all of you now who have had to weather this storm of caregiving through the pandemic, where you didn't have the same access to resources. That was not something I had to deal with, and I really feel for you, because that must have been so challenging. Hopefully some of these resources are coming back to you. And having dementia is hard. All those things, I think, too. You know, because when I was angry about Lynn's situation, it made her angry because she thought I was angry at her. She wasn't sleeping. She had trouble eating, and her resilience was affected. So, and again, physical activity, keeping her physically active, whether it was going for walks with her care partner or her caregivers or volunteers, or going for walks with me, really helped her with those. So you may be wondering why there's a picture of an odd-looking ship on there, and that was a ship I commanded. It was kind of an off-the-books experimental special operations ship. It's really all I can talk about it, but I will say that our missions were pretty tough, and we didn't have a lot of time for physical activity while we were performing them. But what we did was, when we were in port, we spent a lot of time on physical activity just to build up our reserves, because and I knew we were going to lose some of that once we got underway. And I think it goes back to resilience. So kind of the analogy is, you know, doing training while we can, while we have the opportunities, just to help us with resilience and getting through other things. Okay, kind of an odd transition from a special operations ship to a Roman emperor, but this slide came out of a discussion that Amy and I had about how it's not a competition. You know, we're not trying to compare ourselves to other caregivers, which is another kind of trap that I fell into. I would think that, you know, this person is doing so much better than I am with things they're providing for his or her spouse, or can do more time to exercise. And, you know, that was not a healthy attitude for me to take. I should have been judging myself against me, and am I giving Lynn everything she needs, and not comparing myself to somebody else. But I think at the same time, there is some value in comparing yourself to yourself and looking for gains, whether it's gains in your ability to engage in physical activity for you and the person you're caring for, or just gains in your knowledge of how to care for the person, or understanding what the person's going through. Those are all things I learned in my journey with Lynn, and I continue to learn. You know, she's in memory care now, which is that's a different way of being a care partner, because I'm still her care partner, and I'm still engaged in her care. It's a different situation, but I'm still, and I want to make sure I'm providing for her everything that I can while she's in that environment. And I think, again, celebrating victories where they come, whether it's, you know, going for a little bit longer walk, or you know, seeing your partner with a smile, or not getting angry in a situation that maybe you got angry at before. Those are things that I think we can count as wins. And something that Amy used to stress with me and the other social workers at Alzheimer San Diego is, don't be so hard on myself. And I may have mentioned once or twice already that caregiving is hard. And I think we need to give ourselves some credit sometimes, where just for what we're doing, and taking a look back, or taking a step back and seeing what we're doing as value, and it's important to us, and more important to our partners that we're caring for.
Thank you so much, Thomas. And I just want to emphasize the importance of this message. Thomas is a student of many things. He has been attending classes with us at Alzheimer San Diego for a long time. I invited him to co-present this session today because he is such a terrific teacher and has all of this personal experience. But it's really, this is such an important point that we can't compare ourselves to each other. We can really only use our own benchmarks to know when we're improving. So if that's a matter of getting a little bit more physical activity today than we did yesterday, getting 10 more minutes of sleep tonight than we did last night, these are terrific gains. So I hope you'll take that message to heart. Okay, so I'm going to talk for a little bit here about what why this is so challenging to get people with dementia moving, if they're not already moving, to keep them moving as the disease is progressing. What exactly is going on in the brain that produces all of these challenges? As we have clearly established, this is a tough job. This is a difficult journey. Why is it so challenging? And then we're going to pause to take some of your questions. Again, if you have questions, you don't have to hold them. You can just type them into the Q&A, and we'll be addressing those together here in a few moments. So what exactly is going on in the brain of a person who's living with dementia, right? There are structural changes. The brain cells are changing. There are also chemical changes. The chemistry of the brain and the overall body is certainly changing depending upon the type of dementia, the stage that the person is in, and their overall health before they had dementia. All of these things are going to produce a wide variety of symptoms, severity of symptoms, progression of the disease. So there's no sort of general progression that I can describe that applies to everybody who's living with dementia, but some things are fairly common, fairly universal. First, most forms of dementia do involve a person's memory, of course. So changes to memory, short-term as well as long-term, and overall cognitive changes, the changes in how people process information, changes in how people solve problems, right? Kind of work their way through a situation, a puzzle, a physical challenge, finding your way back from the bathroom in the middle of the night, right? After you've woken up, finding your way back to the bedroom in a familiar space, right? Memory and cognitive changes affect all of those things. It becomes difficult for people with dementia as the disease progresses to focus their attention, to really concentrate on an activity, a conversation, whatever it might be. So we really have to modify the way that we structure our communications and the way that we structure our activities, right? Asking somebody to go for a walk at the same time that you're also in the midst of preparing breakfast and the television is on and the pets are running around the house, right? Suggesting physical activity at that time may not be the most productive way to do that. So we have to sort of work with what we've got. And often what we've got is a limited attention span, a limited ability to focus one's concentration. So if we know that, we can change the way that we approach the discussion or the physical activity. So too, changes in sequencing, a very common challenge in people with dementia. When there is damage, particularly up in the frontal lobes of the brain, people have a hard time if you give them a set of instructions and you sort of bark off three commands all at once, right? Grab your shoes, get the leash, and what else might we need to walk the dog, right? And go find the dog, right? Because we're going to go take the dog for a walk, right? That's a lot of information that you've asked somebody to hold on to and to retain all at once, one thing at a time. First, let's find your shoes, right? Sort of slow it all down. So when there's changes in sequencing, we're going to find it takes a lot more patience, a lot more structure, and a lot more sort of slowing down of what we're asking the person to do. There are, of course, significant physical changes that happen to all of us as we age, but in particular to people who are living with dementia as the disease is affecting different regions of the brain. And Thomas's description of his wife Lynn's physical progression of the disease, I think is it's moving. It's important to hear that. Lynn, for those of us who have known her over the years, a very, very vibrant, physically active person, a dancer, very, just very lively. Even people who are very strong, right, are going to experience changes in how much muscle strength they have, how much physical flexibility they have, their ability to maintain their balance, their visual spatial ability, right, their ability to see what's going on in peripheral space. That changes in people with dementia. It narrows over time as the disease is progressing, which means that their sort of center of gravity tends to change a little bit. We see people beginning to stoop over and shuffle a bit because they kind of need to keep a better eye on the ground, right, while they're walking, because when they're looking up, they have a more limited field of peripheral vision. This changes. So we're going to see people slowing down physically. We're going to see changes to their gait, the way that they walk, certainly changes to their balance, and an increase in fall risk, as Thomas noted, he has observed in his wife, very, very common in people in all stages of dementia, not just in the middle and later stages. So again, these are obstacles, but they don't necessarily need to be barriers to participating in physical activity. People who are no longer walking, people who are using wheelchairs, people who always did, right? Certainly, there's lots of opportunity to be physically active, to remain physically active, but we've got to work with what we've got. I think that's probably one of the most important messages to take away here, is that, you know, these conditions are progressive. Unfortunately, we're not yet at a point where we've got treatment that slows down the progression of the symptoms. So instead of trying to rehab people, trying to make them better, what we need to do is work with what they've got. Finally, behavioral changes, a very common feature in nearly every type of dementia. We're going to see personality changes, for better or for worse, right? Sometimes the personality changes produce a person who's sort of easier to get along with and more easygoing and more pleasant. Sometimes they don't, right? Often we're going to see what looks like social withdrawal, right? Not wanting to engage with people, not wanting to participate in activities, physical and otherwise, that they used to enjoy participating in. Very common. That withdrawal can be related to a lot of things. Certainly, there can be depression and anxiety that is at play. It can be a matter of the task simply being too complicated, right? Look back at these other changes, memory changes, cognitive changes, physical abilities are changing. So if a person with dementia has got some awareness of that, right, walking has become challenging, going out the door for a walk with the dog, I'm not totally sure what to expect from that. So just gonna choose to stay here, right? That looks like withdrawal. That looks like apathy. No thanks. You enjoy your walk. I don't really need it, right? Withdrawal, apathy, and then of course, resistance, which we will come back to and talk about at some length here. So again, focus on what is, rather than spending all of our time focusing on what the person cannot do, what is not there. There is a lot of loss in these conditions. I will not sugarcoat that. We need to grieve, right? Things are changing, and they're often changing in unexpected ways, right? Every new thing that someone can't do, this for us as care partners frequently triggers kind of a new wave of grief. Gosh, she was able to do that yesterday, and today she can't do that, right? So I don't mean to suggest that you shouldn't address those things, that you shouldn't recognize them as being real. You need your own internal support for processing that, for coping with that, for grieving that. But when it comes to the direct care and support that we provide to the person with dementia, what we don't want to be doing is pushing as though they are rehabilitating from something, you know, that strength or that can be regained, a new skill that can be developed. This is really hard for us, for most of us as caregivers. If we've ever cared for someone else who didn't have dementia, who had another type of illness, or especially those of us who have raised children, right? We have this tendency to want to push people to do as much as they can for themselves, because of course, children are learning new skills and developing new abilities. someone who's recovering from a fall or from an illness, something that is not a chronic progressive condition, we do want to push to the point that they can tolerate things. Right? It's a little bit different with someone with dementia, right? We don't want to push to the point that they are failing at things. We want to push right up to what they are able to do. And every day that changes, right? So it does require us to be patient. It requires us to be a bit forgiving, and it requires us to be very observant. Where is this person today? What are they capable of doing today? Don't compare, they were able to do this yesterday. That means they should be able to do this today. Right, so assess where they're at. Also, I saw a question come up about this in the chat a few minutes ago. How much insight does the person have into their own changing abilities? Right, I know this has been an issue for Thomas, and in his care of his wife, her perception that she can do more than she can actually do. Right, you do need to be sensitive to what the person thinks that they are able to do versus what that they physically can do, and make some adaptations there. So challenging, I won't lie about it. Anything you want to add there, Thomas?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Yeah,
sure.
The two pieces I'm just going to kind of hit on things you said already is focusing on what Lynn can do, not what she thinks she can do. And what a couple of things I tried, she could think she could walk for 20 miles, which at one point maybe she could, and well, she absolutely could. And then we would go for walks, and I would make sure they were out and back kind of walks, so we could just find a place to turn around and go home. If I could tell she was getting tired, or she liked to walk so fast, and that was kind of hard because that was always a problem. We were hiking in the Grand Canyon, and I couldn't keep up with her. Going down was pretty easy. Coming back up was harder, but she was so fast going down. And then trying to work that, and then things around the house. She wanted to do things around the house, which became harder for her. So we figured out ways to do it together, like just cleaning, like vacuuming. This is one I think Amy's favorite stories about how I would run the vacuum and Lynn would tend the cord, so I didn't have to do that. It was constant tension on the cord, which was great. And now I've realized, well, this is hard to vacuum. I got to control the cord and control the vacuum. But it was something we could do together. It's kind of like a physical activity, or figuring out ways where we could do that. And then you mentioned Amy, and it was harder, things she used to be able to do and she can't do anymore. And that's not something I could dwell on, even now. It's not healthy to look at, well, she could do this and she can't do it now. Okay, let's focus, like, what can she do now? What are things we can do together? And really now it's just, I can hold her hand and we can kind of walk around the grounds, or we can go for a little bit of walk outside where she is, or dancing was never my thing. As big a dancer she was, that was never my thing. But even now, we sit and we listen to music together on an iPod, and she'll dance while she's kind of sitting in the chair. So just finding those kind of things, and like you said, just take what we can when we can. But also, I appreciate that question about trying to control somebody who thinks they can do more than they can, and that's challenging. But I think if there's ways to have kind of exit points along whatever the activity is, and there's a way to redirect, then that would be one strategy that I would recommend you try, because that's what worked for me.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about some communication techniques that might help in doing that in the next segment of the program. But yeah, it's a really significant question and an important challenge that a lot of caregivers face. So you do have to sort of constantly be reassessing, where are they today? And not only where are they, but where do they think that they are in terms of their abilities, their strength, their energy, kind of managing that. At all times, taking into account the person, what's unique about that person, what are the things that they love to do, what are the things that they enjoy doing. I'm going to tell you right now that helping out with the vacuuming is never going to be an activity that I'm going to love doing. But for a lot of people, participating in housework, tending the garden, doing things that feel productive and helpful, keep a person sort of connected to that which is meaningful for them, contributing to the family, to the household in some way, taking care of the pets, watering the plants, right? All of these things, you need to know what sort of fuels the person that you're caring for? What makes them them? What's unique about them? What are their long-standing habits? What are the things that make them feel comfortable, right? If their feet always cold, make sure that we're keeping the socks on during the chair aerobics, for example, right? So remember those things about them that make them special, that make them unique. You may need to adapt them over time, and certainly, with dementia, personalities and preferences are changing. So sometimes we need to adapt to that. But taking in what you know about this person and incorporating it into your plans for physical activity, super helpful. I think a challenge a lot of caregiver space that I hear a lot in education programs is that question of how hard should I work at planning this elaborate activity if she's not even going to remember that we did this, that I went to all this effort, that we took this trip, that we went on that beautiful walk, right? All of the time and the energy that it takes for me to get her dressed and get her ready and get her outside. And then tomorrow, she's accusing me of never coming to visit, and we never spent time together. She doesn't even remember that we did that. A legitimately grief and sadness inducing moment for sure. I just want to remind you that your role as a care partner to a person who's living with dementia is not to create memories for them, right? You are the holder of those memories. You'll keep the memory of it. What you're wanting to do, what I hope that you can aim to do is to create moments, right? The enjoyable walk, the time in the garden together, the activity, the fun doing some chair yoga together or doing some stretches, enjoying a favorite piece of music and dancing around together to it. While the person may not remember that the next day, the next hour, even a few minutes later, depending on where they are in the disease process, the brain may not remember, the body remembers though. Right? If you create a happy moment, if you create a laugh, right? There are physiological responses that happen when people feel joy, when people get a little bit of physical activity. Think back to those benefits of physical activity that Thomas was talking about a few moments ago. Those things linger in the body, whether the person remembers them or not. Right. So you're creating happy moments, you're creating physical responses to that activity, to that movement, whether or not they remember them. So in summary, your goal is to create moments, not memories. Don't set yourself up for sort of unachievable challenges. So Jean and Thomas, can I ask you both to come on up and let's talk about some of the questions that have come in.
Let's do that. So there's been actually both questions and just commentary in chat.
Great.
That I'm just going to condense a little bit and ask the two of you to speak to. And a lot of it has to do with how to motivate the person with dementia. And the comments were, kind of through the course of the disease. So some of them were for parents living with dementia who are still able to live independently. But, in visiting with them regularly, what can we do together that's an activity? Then, kind of more in the middle stage where what can we do just to promote movement, because he has never liked exercise and he's just content to sit in his chair. And then all the way through to the later stages of the disease, when you've got a person with dementia who's no longer speaking, and you might not be sure of how much they are able to comprehend and process. So how do you engage them? So if the two of you could address that just kind of throughout the continuum of the disease.
Ooh, that's a lot. Sure. I'll take a first stab at that. And then Thomas, please feel free, chime in and Jean, you too. I mean, frankly, if you've got any suggestions, I'll just start by saying, I want you to take all this information that we're giving you today about the physical, cognitive, emotional benefits of physical activity, keep them to yourself, right? This is for your own knowledge. We are not suggesting that you argue with the person that you're caring for and try to make a case for why they need to exercise, why they need to get physical activity, right? This is for your own knowledge so that you have that internal motivation to keep going, to know that it's important. But it's really, I think, one of our greatest challenges as caregivers is to try to motivate another person to do something without just, laying out a rational, reasoned argument for it. That's such a normal way that we try to communicate, right? Dad, you really need to participate in physical therapy or you're never going to get out of this hospital bed, right? Dad, you really need to get outside and get some sunshine or you're not going to get enough vitamin D and you're not going to sleep well tonight, right? Whatever the argument might be, these are good reasons, but it's kind of on us as caregivers to sort of keep that motivation, keep our agenda, if you will, to ourselves. This language comes to me from a terrific occupational therapist named Teepa Snow, who trained both Jean and myself and many of us on the staff at Alzheimer's San Diego. And what she recommends that caregivers do is to sort of know your agenda, but not show your agenda, right? So instead of don't use facts and the benefits of exercise to try to make your case. Instead, it's more about making this something that we're going to do together, right? And this works at every stage of the disease. Telling somebody that they need to get outside and get a little bit of fresh air and exercise because it's good for them is one way, right? Not likely to be very effective. Getting your shoes on while you help them get their shoes on together, applying your sunscreen before you, and let them see you doing this, right? Before you apply their sunscreen, taking them hand in hand, arm in arm, and going out the door together, right? Doing that activity together rather than, or finding somebody in their life who can do this for you if you're not physically there to do it. Right. Making it a thing that is happening together, this thing that we are doing rather than telling the person that this is a thing that you need to do is hugely helpful at every stage. Anything you'd add there, Thomas?
Yes, Amy, thank you. As you were talking about that, I was thinking of an example I had with Lynn. As much as she enjoyed going to the activities at Alzheimer's San Diego, one day we got in the car, we drove there, she walked in the front door and she said, I don't want to do this. And it was one of her favorite activities. So we went home and watched the movie. So I think, and again, this got easier for me over time, or less hard, I should say, because nothing ever got easy, but it's okay if what you have planned doesn't happen, and I think there's and be okay with that. I was upset, well, a little bit because the people at Alzheimer's San Diego were and still are my social circle, so that took an opportunity away from me to socialize with people too. But we actually had a good time when we went home and watched the movie, and that was it. So but I think just understanding that what I wanted to do may not happen, and being okay with that, and that again, that going back to being a problem solver, September, October 2016, I handled that a lot different than I do now, and it's tough, but just understanding that things aren't always going to go the way you plan them, and maybe having something in reserve. You're right. It used to hear in the military, pushing rope up a hill, that doesn't work. So sometimes trying to motivate somebody with Alzheimer's disease to do something that you as a care partner want to do is the equivalent of trying to push rope up a hill, because you're not going to go anywhere and you're just going to get frustrated. So just being okay with things not happening, but maybe having one or two things you can have in reserve to do in your figurative or literal kit bag, like I have with Lynn for activities. She doesn't like what we're doing, you just pull another one out of the bag. So something like that. Where works for me. I mean, again, strategies that work for me don't work for everybody, but just things to think about maybe.
Yes, I love the metaphor of trying to push rope up a hill. Thank you for saying that. I think being flexible and improvising at all times is really important.
Can I just add, I absolutely echo everything that the two of you are saying, and I would just suggest, and this comes from not, well, my years of working, both at Alzheimer's San Diego and in other areas as well too, other places. And that includes, I worked in a memory care facility for 10 years. So, I think what you've just talked about is adjusting expectations. Your own expectations is an important part of it. Language wise, I think it's important to be directive with our people with dementia. So not saying, would you like to go for a walk? Or as Amy said, saying the doctor says you should exercise. Like throw that language out and just start, like putting out your hand and saying, come on, let's go. And then you get up, whether you go for a walk or you put some music on and you dance, whatever it is, whatever you folks as care partners know your people with dementia best. So go with what appeals to them. As Thomas has said with Lynn, dancing, music has always, been an important factor for her. So, and for the people who are, maybe starting to be in the later, maybe moderate or more later stages, and there's less certainty on your part as to how much they're processing and comprehending, and or there's physical changes. I got to tell you, one of the things that we did with people at all stages of dementia that everyone really enjoyed, the silliest thing, but it's also the funnest, is we called it balloon volleyball. And so we would get one or two fairly large balloons, blown up, and just start batting it back and forth, sitting in a circle. And there's just, I don't know, everyone from kind of the earlier stages to the later stages couldn't help but get themselves engaged. There was always a lot of laughter. If you did get bonked in the head or the face a little bit, like nobody hit it hard. We weren't being competitive. And if you did get bonked in the face, it didn't hurt anyone. And it was just fun. And I think to try and find those things that just kind of spark some joy and makes you move, you just do it almost because your body is just telling you, you can't not move when that's going on around you. So look for those kind of things. And we can give you more suggestions regarding that at Alzheimer's San Diego.
Yeah, we will be talking about some resources for doing activities at home, streaming programs that you can watch, chair yoga, those types of things. We'll be sharing some of those here in a bit.
There is a question here I'd like to pose to the two of you, and it is, does inactivity, like being wheelchair bound, does that speed up the progression of the disease or exacerbate it in any way? Inactivity, non-activity, how is that impacting dementia?
Yeah, at the disease level, the answer is no. At least there's not any evidence that being less physically active, for example, in the case of Alzheimer's disease, that being physically inactive affects the rate of the spread of the plaques and tangles, just as one example of one type of dementia. So does it actually accelerate the pace of the disease to be physically inactive? Probably not, sort of at the cellular level in the brain, but does it affect the person's quality of life? Does it affect their symptoms? Absolutely. For the reasons that Thomas was describing, being physically active improves your sleep. It improves your, it's sort of all of the other elements of a person's overall well-being. Anxiety symptoms, depressive symptoms, appetite, all of these things are improved when a person is more physically active. So being wheelchair bound doesn't mean you're going to have a faster progression of this disease. It just means you've got sort of a different set of obstacles for staying, for getting enough physical activity. Every person with dementia has their own obstacles with regard to this. That is its own challenge, but there are ways to stay physically active. And no, I don't think that there's any reason for us to believe that that person's, the pathology, the physical disease is going to progress any faster. But you're going to have a better quality of life. You're going to have a better experience of the disease if you can keep the person active.
Great. Have we got time for maybe one more?
We are a little over, but yeah, let's take one more.
Okay, so this is about exercise for a care partner.
Great.
And this particular person has, says they're not a morning person, but they've been able to kind of retrain themselves, mind and body, to get themselves out of bed and go to the gym. But it's hard. And this person, is already not getting enough sleep. So any suggestions for how to kind of manage this importance of exercise? And I'm also a tired, overwhelmed caregiver.
Well, I mean, sleep and sleep hygiene is its own other topic, but it's super relevant to the topic of, if you're exhausted from not getting enough sleep, then it's really hard to motivate to get out of bed in the morning when you're sleep deprived to get to the gym or to get outside for that walk. So sleep really does sort of underpin a lot of what we're talking about here today. I can give a couple of sort of quick suggestions with regard to sleep hygiene techniques, but I think I'd probably refer you to our class on the topic of maintaining your brain health, where we dive into this in a little bit more detail. We also have some resources that we can share with you. If you want to reach out to one of our social workers, they can share some resources regarding sleep with you. So with regard to sleep hygiene, this question of shifting your circadian rhythms, it's hard. It takes time. And the general suggestion from the National Sleep Foundation is to do that in very small increments over time. So sort of shifting your getting to bed 10 minutes earlier tonight than you did last night, right? And also setting an alarm and resetting it, by just 10 minutes or so earlier, making that shift very slow over time, not trying to accomplish too much at once. Of course, starting some new evening wind down sleep hygiene routines, right? Turning off screens, doing something that's relaxing, if that's tea or a bath or reading or whatever works for you. Starting those things a little bit earlier. And the thing about doing that is that means shifting everything else that happens during the course of the day to affect that. If that means changing routines around dinner time, evening television or activities that you tend to do together, what time you walk the dog before bed, whatever those things might be. You can't just focus on that wind down. You've got to kind of shift everything about the day a little bit. But giving yourself about an hour before you want to go to sleep, where you aren't looking at screens, you're not doing things that are too stimulating. While exercise is very important, we don't encourage late night exercise because it's stimulating and it'll interfere with your sleep. Anything you would add there, Thomas?
Yeah, all great points, Amy, but I would add that not doing the things you suggested and just getting up an hour earlier every day to work out is probably going to be counterproductive, because sacrificing sleep for exercise is going to maybe even make the exercise. You're not going to get the benefits out of it that you would otherwise. So that is not a strategy I would recommend.
Yeah.
So it's one I used to do before I got smarter on it, but I don't do it anymore. So sleep hygiene is huge, and getting enough sleep, and maybe as you said, the 10 minutes, if you can find 2 10-minute periods throughout the day to do something and still maintain the same sleep pattern, might be better than trying to get up a 10 or a half hour earlier to get it all done in one shot. So
that's a great suggestion.
Again, just sleep is this isn't a lesson on sleep, but the regenerative, I think that's a word. Anyway, the good things that happen when you sleep are really good, and you don't want to shortchange those by getting up early to exercise, even though that we're saying how good physical activity is. Sleep is important too, and it's trying to find the right balance of everything.
Yes, I will. I admit I will pick getting enough sleep over getting enough exercise in the morning every time, always, sometimes to my detriment. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to keep us moving here. We'll talk a little bit now. Thomas is going to come back and we'll talk about strategies for incorporating all of these activities into your everyday life.
I think this is a good segue slide, is changing your mindset. And there's exhaustive research on health behavior, and it's really challenging. And it's kind of like, it's another problem that's hard to solve. We talked earlier, I think, well, we didn't talk, but 22 minutes a day is all we really need to reach those NIH guidelines. And I think there would be very few people who would argue that physical activity is not good for us. But only 23% of Americans meet those guidelines, which is a really, really small percentage, given that I think everybody would agree that physical activity is good for them. But I think the points on the slide, it's, emotions more than knowledge, sure. What is it what are the barriers? And we're going to talk a little bit about some of those as we go on, but it's hard, and trying to overcome those barriers. And then I think that the next one was a big one for me, and still is, finding something that you enjoy, because if you don't enjoy it, you're just not going to do it. And I've had a couple injuries where swimming has been kind of the go-to exercise that I should do. I know swimming is a fantastic full body exercise, one of the best things people can do. It's non-impact, all those things. But swimming in a pool is the last thing on my list of things I would like to do. I don't like driving to the pool. I don't like walking around the pool on the wet floor. I don't like swimming in a lane back and forth with other people. So I don't do it. Intellectually, I know how good it is for me, but emotionally, I won't do it. So, but there are other things that I like to do that I do. So again, finding something for you, and something, for if you can do with your partner, because again, as I mentioned earlier, the health benefits are amplified when we do it together. But it is more emotions than knowledge, and finding something. And again, we're not necessarily just talking about exercise here, it's physical activity. So finding a physical activity you can do that you enjoy is the key to starting behavior change, and then making it a habit, and then going from there. Okay, I'm not sure, Amy, if this is your slide or my slide, but
It's fine. Sorry.
Okay, I do have something I want to say about it when you're done. So.
Please. Sure. So, well, I'll be quick about this.
Okay.
I just want to say, we were talking about the social benefits. Walking is one of the easiest things that you can do together, either a group of two or a group of many. Walking is a terrific way to be moving for those who are able to walk, right? We certainly recognize there are balance issues, there are fall risks, and there are people who are unable to walk. So we'll talk about this briefly, but important things to be thinking about in planning for your walk is a safe and accessible location, right? Not every neighborhood offers that. So do be thinking about what is a reasonable route, right? If somebody wants to walk for 20 miles, thinks they can walk for 20 miles, what is a route that's going to be sort of adequately stimulating, enough fun things to look at, to make it feel like that was a very long and fulfilling walk, even if it was just, maybe a few blocks, for example. But do be looking for safe, accessible locations. The sidewalks in our city and our county in a lot of regions are not safe. So you do want to sort of check that out and scope it out in advance. Just sort of generally, focusing on staying upright, paying attention to your posture. If you are supporting somebody else, having a good hold on their hand, keeping your hand on their elbow, for example, to provide some extra stability. Pay attention to footwear and clothing. Don't go out for your walks in flip-flops or unstable sandals, right? Have good, secure, it doesn't have to be super high-tech, fancy athletic shoes or clothing, but clothing that is comfortable for the temperature that you're walking in, and shoes that don't slip or slide and that provide enough structure. Focusing, of course, on your breathing. If you're walking at a pace where it is hard to keep up, slow it down. Right? You want to be able to maintain conversation easily during the walk. It doesn't mean you should maintain conversation during the walk. If the person with dementia struggles to be talking and conversing while you're walking, then don't. Enjoy the quiet and enjoy the walking. But you want to be breathing and moving at a pace where you could be maintaining conversation. It's a good sort of guideline. Special considerations in a pandemic, I'm happy to say, when we put the slide deck together, that was kind of a thing. We had to move off of sidewalks and avoid people. I think we're moving away from needing to pay attention to those particular issues right now, which is a great thing. So Thomas, what would you like to add on this topic?
I'm sorry for clicking on and off.
No,
because
right.
Lost the mouse control there. 2 points. One, just on the footwear, hit all those points, but I just to the importance of socks and wearing the right kinds of socks for the activity. Because the wrong socks can be almost as detrimental as the wrong shoes if the shoes and socks don't get along very well.
Yes.
Too. But the second time and the last time I will do this to you is to read a quote, but I want to read one from the American College of Sports Medicines from their exercise management for persons with chronic diseases and disabilities. And it's walking should be the default form of physical activity for those who can walk, just as pushing oneself in a wheelchair should be the default activity for those who are wheelchair bound. So there was a question earlier about, my person's in a wheelchair, what can he or she do? And it can be propelling in the wheelchair. And from seeing all the wheelchair bound people where Lynn lives, it's not just using arms to push the wheels. A lot of them pull themselves around with their feet, and that's how they get around. So I think, and that is just a great way to move. And I think, Amy, you mentioned, or the question about, does a lack of physical activity directly impact Alzheimer's? And I agree 100% on the quality of life. And I think just the ability to be self-mobile, I think, is big, and just to move around, whether it's walking or pulling yourself or pushing yourself in a wheelchair. So that's where physical activity helps as well. So, well, that was it. My point I wanted to make.
Great, thank you. Really helpful information. Yeah. Just a couple of notes on where to find information about those things. And again, I'll remind you, you will get an emailed PDF version of these slides. So you don't have to write all this down. But if you're looking for walking routes, you're looking for shoes and good socks, where can you go for that? So we've just provided a list for you here of some of the local resources: your local senior center, your local branch library, YMCA. Not only do they offer, many of them offer group exercise programs, they can also help you identify good, safe walking routes in your neighborhood if you're not familiar with them. We do have a couple of mall walking programs, and I'm happy to say these are back up and running because it's safe to do so again, indoor and outdoor mall walking programs. Of course, your local Parks and Rec department, their website or their catalog. They can connect you to ideas and information for walking and other activities. Circulate San Diego is a really wonderful, it's a kind of a mobility advocacy group here in San Diego. So they've got a great page with walking and biking resource information. And then of course, if you use these types of tools, you can look on Meetup, you can look on Nextdoor to look for groups that are meeting up, walking, doing activities in your local region. And then just a couple of resources for shoes and equipment if you need them: Roadrunner Sports and the Walking Company. Just a couple of ideas. No magic to to either of those recommendations. So some other ways that you can get moving. This photo just brings a big smile to my heart. This is Danny. For those of you who have ever participated in our social activities back at the office, Danny. Thomas and his wife attended a lot of Danny's movement and motion programs at our social activity program at the Alzheimer's San Diego office. These have been she's been doing these recording videos that you can watch. They're available on our website still, but very happy, excited to announce that we're back offering in-person movement and motion classes at Alzheimer San Diego again as of this month. They're outside though. We have a set of Little League fields right behind our office, and these activities will be offered in the Little League, a safe and shaded area of the Little League field, where we'll be able to resume those here in the coming weeks. Very excited about this. But some general ideas if you participate with Danny and us at Alzheimer's San Diego or not. And we'll provide you with resources for all of these things. Doing seated movements, doing stretching. Stretching can be active, where the person initiates the stretch themselves, or it can be passive, where you sort of pull on a person's limb or push gently, of course, to do what we call a passive stretch. So seated movements, stretching, dancing, could be standing and moving around, or it could be done in a chair, it could be done in a bed, right? If you're moving your body to the rhythm of the sound of music, that's dancing, right? Following along with a televised or streaming exercise program, doing these things via a companion in a remote setting. So doing things on FaceTime or Zoom with other people, right? Doing stretches together. If you're a long distance caregiver, this is a really nice way to sort of connect and do something kind of fun together, put on a piece of music and move together. And then again, passive versus active movement and stretching. So here are a couple of resources for finding those things. The Feeling Fit Club is a terrific resource that we have here in San Diego. Functional fitness programs for older adults and for people with disabilities. They run live or recorded televised programming 3 times a day on the county's channel, which you can find in your local cable provider. You can also watch them online on the countynewscenter.com website. They also can send you a DVD for just watching these things on your own schedule at home if their schedule doesn't work for you. I know there was a question about finding activities that happen outside of the regular sort of Monday through Friday business hours. So these are some good resources for that. Our All's Companions, this is our companion respite program, which is offered both virtually and now back to in-person again, where we send trained volunteers to come out to the home or to do FaceTime or Zoom visits, depending on what works best for you, to spend time together. All's Companions can do physical activities together, go for walks, dance, participate in a yoga class, right? Whatever it might be. So if you as a care partner, like this is just too much for you, or you want to do your own thing, you would like to go out for a walk that's more energetic, right? Maybe you can get some exercise on your own while you have one of our All's Companions do some exercise with the person that you care for. Our social activities and outings program, in addition to our movement and motion program, we've got music-centered wellness. We have a baseball reminiscence program. We have connections outings out in the community, regular programs at the Helen Woodward Animal Center, for example. All of these things, while they don't count as exercise, right? They're physical activity, and they're getting the person moving and engaging. And again, I'll just refer you to our website for that online exercise library of the recordings of Danny's programs. She's the best. Other ways to get moving through other purposeful activity, right? So housework, Thomas is going to talk about this a little bit more because again, not my wheelhouse. Doing housework, I'm afraid. Doing gardening, doing yard work together, going on outings, getting the laundry done together, or just folding it, right? Walking back and forth from the laundry room or from the washer dryer. That may be all the exercise the person is going to get that day, but that might be really meaningful, and it might be sufficient, right? It might be an improvement from yesterday. Playing games together, incorporating, if there are children in your life, grandchildren, children, neighbor kids, they are a terrific source of exercise, just trying to sort of run around and keep up with them, as well as pets. This, of course, we have to take with a grain of salt. Pets, especially dogs, walking them on leashes outside of the house, or cats who can sort of get underfoot, can definitely represent a fall risk for all of us, but especially for people who are living with those visual spatial changes that I was describing before. So it may be, it may not work for you in your particular situation, but engaging with kids and pets can be a really terrific source of sort of meaningful, purposeful activity as well. So Thomas, you want to say a few words about housework as a source of movement and activity?
I do, but there's one thing I want to talk about before we get to that real quick.
Oh, sure.
Something on this slide, pets need physical activity too. So it's good if you can incorporate your pets into it as well. And this may mean for you as the care partner, maybe not so much for who you're caring for, but something as simple as, not trying to find the closest parking spot to wherever you're going and trying to walk a little bit farther away or taking the stairs. Those things all add up to those 22 minutes a day. And Amy mentioned the social activities. Pre-pandemic, I was once a week we go bowling, and Lynn and I used to go together, then I went by myself, but with other couples who were on the Alzheimer's journey together. And this grew out of a social activity from Alzheimer's San Diego, where it was going bowling. And then we kept it up in weekly and did it. So, which was fantastic. It was good for all of us. It was good for the spouse care partners. It was good for our people we're caring for, the social. It was just a real good. It was a great example of everything Amy talked about, or we've talked about the social aspect of it, the physical activity. And it was a lot of fun, and I miss it. And I'm hopeful that now that most of the pandemic stuff is behind us, that we can get that going again. Because it was really the highlight. When I was going with Lynn, it was the highlight of both of our weeks, and it remained a highlight of my week even afterward. All right, so I got the researcher in me got curious about how good an exercise really is housework. So I wear a fitness tracker, so I used it one day while I was cleaning my little 1,200 square foot townhouse. And I admit that maybe I approach housework with a little more vigor than other people might, but you can see there the extra workout that I got out of it. So now the 29 active minutes, the way the tracker works is I have to be above a certain heart rate for 10 minutes before it starts tracking it and keep it there. So, but you see in 50 minutes, that's a pretty good workout. I was surprised even, just pushing the vacuum around and sweeping and walking around my house and up to 1,500 steps. So there's a concrete example of 50 minutes of housework, how that can equate to what is a pretty good workout. And I have similar data for working in my garden, which is a lot of sweeping and pruning, and it's a container garden, so I have to move containers around of plants, but it's pretty similar results. So I have, it's a small sample size, but I have actual scientific evidence, for me anyway, of how good a workout just cleaning the house can be. So just food for thought there.
Great, thank you. I'm glad that you are able to speak knowledgeably on that topic. Just a couple of quick concluding thoughts on this issue of managing resistance, which I know we've already talked about a few times, but is a very important topic when it comes to staying active. So to Jean's point that she made during the last Q&A, keeping your language and your movements what we call action oriented, instead of engaging in negotiation and question asking about, do you want to do this or do you want to do that? Do you feel like going for a walk, right? Instead, use very persuasive, direct language. Time to go. Let's get outside. It's a beautiful day, right? Instead of sort of well, negotiating. So avoiding those questions, giving lots of affirmation, reassurance, and praise as you go along. If the person responds, gets up and starts walking out the door, right? Say something that really encourages them and keeps them moving. If they're doing it, even if they're not, right? If they're participating in doing a televised activity program with you and an exercise class, right? Provide them that reassurance that they're doing a great job, whatever little bit that they can accomplish. Do remain mindful of the person's level of insight, right, into their own needs. If they don't have an awareness that they are living with dementia and they have declined abilities, right? This happens to a lot of people with dementia, not just with regard to their ability to engage in physical activity, but just their ability to do the regular stuff of life. If that person doesn't have an accurate view of their own abilities, their decline in function over time, then you're not really going to be successful at trying to convince them of why they need to do this or why they need to accept your help. So just sort of work with what you've got. Music is the ultimate motivator when it comes to most forms of physical activity. If you can set housework to music, you can set cooking, gardening, right? Take music outside. Of course, it's great with dancing. Music is a terrific motivator and something that's almost always available to most of us anywhere we are for free. So if somebody doesn't feel like getting outside for a walk, turn on some music at the bedside and do some activities together. Their music is incredibly impactful as a motivator. Use whatever, works for you. And as always, making this a team effort is a great strategy. So I'll ask my colleagues to come back and we'll take a few questions here and then wrap up. If there are any, I don't know, Jean.
Actually, it looks like there's not been any new questions come in.
Okay.
But what I was just about to send out in chat is just that we do have in our webinar library a couple of classes specifically addressing communication with a person living with dementia, and another one on managing resistance. And, so if you want to learn a little bit more and acquire some more, kind of strategies and coping tools for managing those areas, which most people who are care partners for somebody with dementia, there's something to be learned there. Please check those out. But no, I haven't, there's no new questions here.
Okay, we will keep going. We'll focus on the important next topic at hand, and that is getting support around all of this. I think most of us who are care partners or who have other challenges in our life, we've got people around us who are well-intended, who want to help, who are always saying to us, what can I do to help you? How can I help you? And we often struggle to accept that help or to give people, really practical ideas. What can I do to be helpful? Tell you what, come over tomorrow at 12 o'clock. I'll take a little bit of a break and you can take my loved one for a walk, or you can wheel them outside and tool around in the garden a little bit. Right? Use the supports and the people who are in your life who are able and willing to help. You can use them to make some of this physical activity, movement, motion, to make some of it possible if you've got sort of time and resource barriers there. So develop your support system and get them involved. And if you don't have a good, strong support system, and many people don't, you are not alone. Reach out to us at Alzheimer's San Diego. We can connect you to some of these resources that I've already mentioned, right? Our companions, our social activities, the online library, but we will also connect you to other community resources. Our friends at the Southern Caregiver Resource Center, Elder Help, there are many, the Glenner Alzheimer's Family Centers, there are many terrific community resources out there that we can tell you about and connect you with. If you don't have those sources of support already in your life. And remember that there is a wide array of adaptive activity programs here in San Diego County for those of you who are local. I've provided a list for you here of some of the adaptive activity programs that we have. This means these are programs that are designed for people with disabilities, both physical as well as cognitive disabilities. So our city Parks and Rec department has a whole division devoted to therapeutic recreation services. I mentioned the Feeling Fit Club. SDSU has a terrific adaptive fitness clinic where they work with people with physical and cognitive disabilities and also support their care partners. Silver Age Yoga, super cool live yoga classes. I believe they'll be resuming in-person yoga classes at different locations around the county soon if they haven't already. And then you may be familiar with Silver Sneakers. This is actually a national program, an online and gym-based health and fitness program that many private insurance companies help pay for, which is really cool. So again, we will email out the slides and you will have those resources. So this is who we are at Alzheimer San Diego, offering a wide variety of free programs and supports. Jean has been putting out in the chat. If you haven't seen that already, please scroll through the chat there. Jean has been putting out some links in the chat with information about some of these programs. You can find all of it on our website. You can also find in there a form that you can use, fill that out, and a member of our clinical services team will reach out and tell you more about a program, answer your questions, connect you to a resource, whatever it is that you might need. So we've got classes on a variety of topics, dozens of different support groups, most of which are just continuing to meet virtually for now, but all of these things we're moving slowly back out into the real physical world together. Our social activities and outings program, our volunteer programs, that companion respite program, as well as our Vitals, Volunteers in Touch program, where volunteers are making telephone reassurance calls, just check-ins, social calls, or helpful calls for people who need reminders about things, for people with dementia who are living alone. A really nice point of social contact, and of course, practical support as well. We can connect you to local research opportunities. And by the way, there are research projects happening here in San Diego County related to your health too, right? Caregiver health and wellness, the benefits of exercise and mindfulness and self-care for dementia caregivers, as well as people who are living with the disease. So if we can help with any of these resources, here's where you can find us. Lots of good information on our website. You can find it there, or you can reach out and we'll send you specific information if you are looking for it. Jean has just put out in the chat the link to fill out a request form to have a member of our team follow up with you. So please don't hesitate if we can get you more information. Before we go, a couple of upcoming education programs want to make sure you know about. We have our legal and financial basics program next Tuesday afternoon, which will be taught by local state planning and elder law attorney Andrea Garini. It'll be a terrific program, good overview of the legal and financial things we want for people with a new diagnosis or care partners of people who are living with dementia to be thinking about and planning for. And then 2 classes coming up regarding sort of long-term care, the care options. One program focused on people who are living at home, so in-home care, adult day programs, community-based resources, and then another program July 7th on the topic of residential placement options. So those are just a couple that are coming up. We have our whole summer calendar coming online here shortly. That is the end of the program. We would love your feedback. When this webinar ends, you're going to get directed to a short survey. We'd love your feedback. We will be emailing out a copy of all these slides, including a set of references where you can look up so the science, the research behind much of what Thomas and I have been talking about. You can read more and learn more about that. And then again, there will be a recording available in our webinar library soon. So my thanks to you, Thomas and Jean and Mona, for everyone's help here today. Thomas, for sharing your heartfelt experiences as a care partner to your beautiful wife, Lynn. We all learn and benefit from your experience so much. It's very generous of you to share that with us. And it's always a pleasure to get to co-present with you.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to present with you too. And I just can't stress enough how important Alzheimer's San Diego was to both Lynn and me in our journey. It still is. So yeah, for those who this may be your first exposure to the organization, I urge you to take full advantage of all the programs that they offer.
Terrific. Thank you. It's really been our pleasure to be a support to you and to all of you who attended today. Thank you for coming. I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar now, but just reach out if we can be of any further support to you. So thank you all for coming.